Hello everyone, welcome to an analysis of dance, where we discuss the movements and debuts of the Billboard Hot Dance charts in immaculate detail, with in-depth reviews of each debut each week. Oh, for God's sake, that's 2 15+ debut weeks back to back? May I at least get it more here? Skrillex saw the expected double album domination, but we also got Rihanna sticking around and a few other debuts, making this week somehow even more destructive than last week. How does that happen? Well, okay, on number 1, where I'm Good Blue by David Guetta and Bibi Bourelly is continuing to just free fall on radio. Kind of concerning that there are people willingly listening to this enough to keep it this high. For God's sake, guys, let this dumpster fire of a song go away, please. Shame BZApp Music Sessions Volume 53 by BZApp and Shakira is just stranded at number 2. Radio is really slow to get on board, and streaming can only hold so much. What surprised me though was We Found Love by Rihanna featuring Calvin Harris actually holding on at number 3. But given the residual streaming and radio, I'm also not that shocked it lasted. The question will be whether this lasts at this spot come next week, which will be an interesting conversation to say the least. As expected, both Hold Me Closer by Elton John and Britney Spears and 1035 by Tiesto featuring Tame and Craig rebounded to their positions at number 4 and number 5 respectively. The latter is actually getting some considerable radio growth, so I expect it will overtake soon. But that's more because Only Girl in the World by Rihanna slipped hard to number 6 as the streaming started to recede a fair bit. I don't know how long this one will last, but I don't see it having We Found Love staying power. But then we have a return to our top 10 as expected given the radio streaming and boost from the album Trustful by Pink at number 7. Now I don't expect this to have insane staying power. The album boost will draw back a bit, especially with the mixed reception to the album as a whole, but it's still nice to see this here at all. Good on Pink. But finally ending our top 10, 3 more Rihanna songs as both Where Have You Been at number 8 and S&M at number 9 hold steady, while Don't Stop the Music falls down to number 10 as it loses more streaming. Shocker to absolutely nobody. But here's the thing, we had 20 dropouts this week. Basically everything that survived last week below the top 30 got absolutely decimated. That being said, the only song that fell out that won't be coming back is BOTA Baddest of Them All by Lisa Rose and Interplanetary Criminal, as I predicted last week. The rest, like Hero by Martin Garrix and Jake, Miss You by Southstar, In the Humor by Chris Lake and Arctic, Dash Star by Nog 2, Messy in Heaven by Venby and Godard, Do It All Again by Punctual and Jordan Shaw, and World Hold On Fisher rework by Bob Sinclair featuring Steve Edwards will all likely return in the next 2 weeks once Skrillex and Rihanna reseed. Additionally, the songs that fell this week were really just the remaining songs that didn't get knocked off. I mean, you had your debuts that actually survived, like Saturday Sunday by Jason Derulo and David Guetta at 38, and Giga Chad Theme by Geox M still alive at 35, as well as your continued Ava Max falls like Maybe You're the Problem at 45, Ghost at 32, and $1 Million Baby at 30. These were all predictable. Hell, you could have seen continued losses from last week like Belle Mercy by Zhengi at 47, Love Me a Little by Eleni Menina Nesbitt at 44, Clouds by Bunt and Nate Traveler at 42, and Lay Low by Tiesto at 34 coming as well. That being said, there are 2 songs I really want to draw attention to. The first is Ghosts Again by Depeche Mode, only falling to 23. This song has actually got staying power. Alternative radio has really gotten on board. That is a really promising sign going forward. The second and most shocking for me, Delilah Pull Me Out of This by Fred Again at 49, mostly because it's not only the only song below the top 30 to survive this week, but that actually has managed to fight through these last 2 weeks, possibly securing itself a year-end list position, which is absolutely incredible news. Great for Fred Again for a terrific song as well. But shock horror, Skrillex absolutely dominated the jumps and comebacks this week. I mean, in just our comebacks, we saw Real Spring with Bladee at 40, Gina with Naibal Kuti at 31, and most interestingly, Butterflies with Starrah and Fortet at 22. That last one might actually have a second run. That's kind of interesting to note. But also, we need to look at our jumps, where yes, Trustful cracked the top 10 by Pink, but the rest were also all by Skrillex, being way back with Pink Pantheress and Trippie Redd at 24, and especially Leave Me Like This with Bobby Raps at 18. That latter one was impressive. It might actually make it to the year-end list if it survives after this week. But okay, let's get to it. 17 debuts here. Although thankfully this will be easier given I've heard both albums, and these will be slightly shorter reviews than usual. So let's get started particularly rough with number 50, Bad For Me by Skrillex, Corbin, and Chief Keef.
yourself on a back.
One thing I've noticed with these debuts is that outside of one glaring exception, the majority of the lower debuts are covered with Don't Get Too Close tracks. I mean, the later release window definitely didn't help here, but it's also more than likely that fans dip from this album more than Quest for Fire, which is fine by me because Don't Get Too Close isn't remotely good. And what better way to start than one of the worst tracks Skrillex has made to date. The production is a lazy trap clunker where the bass is way too loud and the mix is empty as all hell. Corbin sounds absolutely awful with his whiny, dragged out vocal runs that sound dreadful. Chief Keef phones in his verse with nothing of note to give, and the song can't even be bothered to end effectively, kind of just disappearing behind a load of bullet shell sounds. It's an absolutely awful song, and yet somehow still not the worst of the album when 3 AM exists, which thankfully did not chart. Still, this is crap, skip it. Number 48, Don't Leave Me Like This by Skrillex and Bobby Raps.
Rather be blinded, wanna be reminded.
The ambient intro to Don't Get Too Close, which I will admit gets some points for at least sounding decent on principle, it's clearly meant as a bridge between the two albums featuring Bobby Raps on the intro with similar titles. That being said, man, do I have absolutely no use for this when the original song exists. This is so generally uninteresting and empty with really flat ambient pads and field recordings against the same auto-tuned vocals from Bobby Raps that clash really awkwardly against the backing female vocals. The outro is pretty, but still, I've got no use for this. Pretty mediocre. Number 46, Renaissance, The White Lotus, Tiesto remix by Tiesto and Cristobal Tapia de Veer. Okay, so the first of our 3 non-Skrillex debuts have a bit of an interesting story behind it. So context, Cristobal Tapia de Veer is a Chilean-Canadian film composer from Quebec who created the soundtrack to a 2021 limited series on HBO called The White Lotus, where the titular theme song actually won an Emmy Award. Fast forward to now, Tiesto decides to remix the theme 2 years after the show aired, and thanks to his name recognition, the remix of Cristobal's original theme is now charting on the hot dance charts. Fascinating story there, and it's nice that the remix is actually really damn good. Of course, you can hear Cristobal's influences here. The pitch-shifted vocals and incredibly gorgeous cinematic verses really do sound brilliant, but then Tiesto brings in these shuddering synths against a really clean percussion line for some incredibly hard-hitting yet beautiful drops that honestly match the vibe of the original theme quite well. It kind of gives me some Martin Garrix vibes in just how heavy the melody is against the big-sounding mix, where I honestly might like this a lot more than what Martin Garrix have been putting out recently. So yeah, it's definitely not built to last, but this is a really damn good little curiosity. I quite like this. Check it out. Number 43, Don't Go by Skrillex, Justin Bieber, and Don Toliver.
See him pulling at you that way. Ooh, if this is where you're supposed to be.
And on the topic of surprises, we're actually getting this song now. For the 2 of you who forgot, this song came out in 2021. It actually charted on the Hot 100 before mostly being forgotten. Clearly, Billboard's definition of a dance song has drastically changed since then. But hey, at least we know this song is still just as forgotten by fans that debuted this low, which is funny because I actually don't mind this at all. Yes, Don Toliver's voice does feel a bit out of place on this harder breakbeat production, but he still sounds pretty decent, and Justin Bieber really did deliver here. Yes, that COVID line is already insanely outdated, plus I question how well he fits on an album like this as the only big pop singer, but he still sounds mostly invested. I really like the hook too. So yeah, it's one of the few times on this goddamn album that the song comes together and actually works for me. I kinda like this, not bad. Number 41, Ceremony by Skrillex, Young Lean, and bladee.
Smoking hair and smell like mint. Timberland stomp, go stomp it in. Timberland stomp, go stomp it in. Stomp it in, stomp it in.
These next 2 are arguably some of the only songs on Don't Get Too Close that are actually worth a shit. So here's the other song with bladee on the album that also happens to be really solid too. Yes, it's not very exciting from a production standpoint, trading off between a very smooth breakbeat sound for Young Lean's very tight, well-constructed verses, and more downbeat styles for the hook that doesn't really lend well to bladee's delivery, but still it's generally a nice listen. Not much more to add, it's kind of one note, doesn't involve much, but it's still a good song, I like it. Number 39, Selecta by Skrillex and Beam.
You would finish my sentence, connected words for me. Right out of Tokyo, I took that personally. You're on your selection.
Okay, I'll be fair here, this is probably my favourite song on Don't Get Too Close. I love the harder bass house beat, the blast of wubs and bass on the hook are very welcome and make the sound gritty as all hell, and Beam sounds really on point here, arguably even more than his other song that we'll get to later on. Yes, it's a bit out of place to have this sort of heavier sounding song on an album filled with an essential pop and trap, and no, it's definitely not Beam Joyride's song of the same name, but still, really good song, definitely the highlight and what saved a pretty mediocre album otherwise. Number 37, Good Space by Skrillex and Starrah. It's so telling that this blatant retread of Face My Fears is not only better than the majority of Don't Get Too Close, but is also really good despite being probably the worst full song on Quest for Fire. I really like Starrah's auto-tune singing that wavers across the mix, the blast of twinkly harp-like simps on the verses add to the spacey vibe, and even with the unoriginal sound of the drops, I do still like them around the same as I did with Face for Fears. So yeah, if this is the worst song for Quest for Fire, that says a lot. It's a really good song. Number 36, Too Bizarre, Juked by Skrillex, Swae, Siiickbrain, and Posij.
Too bizarre, but I love things how they are. My mega superstar, baby, we don't have to talk.
Okay, so since I won't ever get to talk about it, I'll just say right now that I'm not a fan of the original Too Bizarre at all. It's clunky, the hook is really weak, and Siiickbrain shouting vocals got grating in record time. Well, this remix not only ditches the bad beat of the original in favor of one of the grittiest D&B beats of 2023, but also completely smothers out Siiickbrain's vocals, hiding them far in the mix on a single build-up. Thank Christ. That just leaves Swae to carry the whole track with some really catchy vocal melodies, tons of intense blasts of glitchy synth effects, and some of the most energetic drops Skrillex has ever done. Even if there's better on this album, this is really great. I really like it. Number 33, A Street I Know by Skrillex and Eli Keszler. This one really relies on being patient the whole way through, because yes, I will admit the vocal samples do get a bit repetitive over time, even if the panning on them makes for great sound design, and the first drop is admittedly a bit slow and plodding to really get into. But then the song picks up as the beat increases in tempo and activity before transitioning into a goddamn hands up drop at the end that is absolutely sublime. Creates such a satisfying end to a track with some really gorgeous production that creates such a huge nocturnal vibe that has single-handedly pushed this up for me. Really good song, I dig this a lot too. Check it out. Number 29, Food for the Soul by It's Murph. Okay, this one is just odd to me. So for those of you who don't know this guy, and I assume that's pretty much everybody here, It's Murph, also known as Garrett Murphy, is a rising producer out of California who has only released 3 tracks as of recording this, with his high stream song only having around 3 million streams. I would say that this would mean that there was a big label push behind this particular song, but that would imply his label Sonic Cafe has really any notoriety at all, which it doesn't. Note this actually blew up on TikTok, meaning we might have our 2023 equivalent to Disco Lines, albeit without the shady release strategy. I'm honestly not complaining though, because this is actually a really good song too. It genuinely surprised me. For one, the synth production is fantastic, sounding almost Deadmau5-like with a blast across the build-up and some great use of stutter effects on the drop that play off a really good melody. It's a song that feels so controlled and relaxed whilst also slapping really hard at the same time. If I had to critique it, well, those vocal samples are a bit of a mood killer, especially with how they clash against the backing vocals, but otherwise this is really impressive. I'd like to see how this guy goes moving forward. This is really fascinating, I'll take it. Number 28, Sacrifice by Kx5 and Sofi Tukker. I was expecting this collab a lot earlier, especially given Sofi Tukker did show on songs like Hold from Wet Tennis that they were definitely taking inspiration from both Cascade and Deadmau5's style of classic progressive house. I was excited, of course. Kx5 singles have continued to really grow on me, and especially Avalanche has really stuck with me recently. So did this live up to expectations? Well, yes, it absolutely did. In fact, I might actually like this the most out of the post-escape singles so far, which really says a lot. The dark club vibes of this production are goddamn perfect in setting the right mood, where Sofi Sofi sounds so comfortable singing over this lush mix that I honestly wish she would do more of. It really works well for her voice. That being said, the moment those drops kick in, that's when the song really gets going. I've not heard either Cascade or Deadmau5 do a straightforward techno cut with supremely hard kicks before, but man, they pulled it off. This entire song absolutely slaps, and those drops are just so fucking satisfying to listen to. So yeah, excellent song. I have nothing to complain about with this. I hope moving forward this is actually able to stick. That would be awesome to see. Number 27, still here with the ones that I came with, by Skrillex, Robinson and Bibi Bourelly. This collab should just not work on paper. Even though I love both Skrillex and Robinson, they occupy very different styles of electronic music. I had no idea what to expect. And thank God, this song is actually excellent too. The live garage beat with Bibi Bourelly's very pretty vocals sounds gorgeous, balancing the heavy elements of Skrillex's modern style with some clear Robinson melodies that really shine on the second build-up. This whole song is just really pretty all the way through, an easy highlight on the album and a fantastic closer. I love this one. Number 26, Hydrate by Skrillex, Flowdan, Beam, and PEEKABOO.
Killer contacts, front line never gonna run back. Got mine ready for the combat. Me against them when I'm on that. Somebody should have beg pardon. Cause none of my soldiers are on that. Diplomats speak different jargon, but money talks louder, we got that.
And from that we get to one of the hardest songs on the album, and absolutely another highlight for me. Yes, Beam's vocals on the song did take a while to get used to. They're very melodic on this song that's otherwise so aggressive and hard hitting, but man, they have a very nice balance, especially with how goddamn strong the auto-tune production is here and the album as a whole. That being said, this beat is disgustingly good, as those wubs just echo out on a really heavy tear out / rhythm adjacent drop before exploding into this blast of distortion near the end, and Flowdan just absolutely goes off across all his verses here. He's slowly becoming a really credible grime rapper with songs like this. His voice just works perfectly for this kind of dark instrumentation. This song is an absolute slapper and goddamn great. I really dig this one. Unlike number 25, Summertime by Skrillex and Kid Cudi. Okay, look, I get why this debuted high, it's the Cudi feature, but he's absolutely phoning this one in, sounding completely checked out and bored in his delivery. It's a shame too, Kid Cudi can really sing well on the right production, but this boring trap production with barely any bass and a complete cavernous mix of synths against the guitars and a really loud percussion line just doesn't work at all. This song's a total drag more than anything. Again, not the worst song from the album, but it's not remotely good either. Next, number 21, In Our Exhale by Skrillex, Aluna, and Keto. This one really surprised me, not just because after seeing Keto live last year that I never thought she would be on a Skrillex song, but also with just how well her melodies and production touches work against a really gritty beat with some fantastic bass production and Aluna's very catchy, albeit repetitive vocal sample. I will agree with the majority when I say that fake out beat on the second drop is absolutely incredible and deserves to be extended out, but this song still slaps regardless. I absolutely can't complain much, this is really damn good. Number 20, Tears by Skrillex, Juker, and Sleep Nets? I'm not surprised this charted so high. It's an easy fan favourite from the album, and the inclusion of Sleepnet, a former member of Noisia, really helped flesh this one out into yet another gritty as fuck song. Seriously, this production is nasty as all hell. Every single synth sounds so precise and incredibly satisfying. It's the sort of production and mixing that only select few artists can pull off as well as these three can. No wonder this one was a fan favourite. It's fucking excellent. I dig this so much. Really great song. And finally, number 14, Ratata by Skrillex, Missy Elliott, and Mr. Wazo. This one one seems to be the song getting pushed the most off the album, and I get why. The beat is hard hitting but allows for the faster trap / house sound to really play well off of Missy Elliott's verses, and the short runtime means that this will be definitely a lot more replayable for a lot of people. It's not a favourite from the album, hell it took a fair few listens to escape being my least favourite on here, and the hook can get quite annoying with repeat listens, but still, I quite like it. It's a good song. But yeah, that was a really good week. Shocker coming from the Skrillex fan here. Funnily enough though, I'm gonna give a tie for best of the week between Tears by Skrillex, Joker and Sleepnet with Sacrifice by Kx5 and Sofi Tukker. Look, even with my love for Crest of Fire, Sacrifice just hits a different level for me. But yeah, Skrillex is also getting 2 honourable runner-ups with Hydrate with Flowdan, Beam and PEEKABOO, alongside still here with the ones that I came with Porter Robinson and Bibi Bourelly. Unsurprisingly, the worst songs here are from Don't Get Too Close with Bad For Me with Chief Keef and Corbin, easily getting the worst, followed by Summertime with Kid Cudi as the dishonourable runner-up. Next week, oh Christ, a lot of these Skrillex songs are going to be gone, so we will see a ton of jumps and comebacks. So look forward to that. But yeah, that's all for this episode of an analysis of dance. See you next time.